This is Liz, and I work with On One Software. Today, I'm going to be doing a webinar all about Perfect Photo Suite 9 and a lot of the new features that you're going to find inside the suite that are going to be big changes from Suite 8. Before we get started, there are a couple of things that I want to tell you about. First, about the webinar itself. I'll probably talk for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then I'll save the last 10 to 15 minutes for you guys to ask questions. There is a questions panel in your GoToWebinar control panel, so if there is something that you would like to know, don't hesitate to ask. I know that the suite is pretty different. There are a lot of big changes in there, so do not feel weird about asking a question or something that you're a little confused about. You can ask them now or save them for later. But again, I usually talk for about a half an hour or so with no interruptions, and then I save that last little bit of time. Now, we also have an awesome website. If you go to ononesoftware.com, we have our support section where you can look up questions. So if I can't answer something today, you can either take a look at our knowledge base, which is a huge searchable forum all about questions that you send in to us that hopefully we can help answer. We do have free customer support, so you can call us or email us and let us know if there's something that you do need help with. And then we also have our entire Learn section. So you can watch live classes like this one. We're starting out pretty slow, mostly with introductory webinars right now, and we'll be advancing a little bit more in December about newer stuff that we're interested in showing you guys. But for now, we're going to be sticking with a lot of those new features that came with Suite 9. If you do want to learn a little bit more about other aspects of the suite, in that same Learn section, you can also jump up and take a look at our training videos. We do have videos up from Suite 8 and Suite 9, but a lot of the Suite 8 videos are still relevant for Suite 9. Things like how to use the radial masking bug still exists and is still in exactly the same spot as it was in Suite 8 as it is in Suite 9. So just in case you want a little bit of help with things that maybe you're not really finding through the webinars or through asking us a question through our customer support, don't forget that you do have access to that entire On One Software website there with all of our videos and blog posts. Now, this webinar, we're going to be going over what's new inside Perfect Photo Suite 9, and I pulled up our Suite 9 page because it has an awesome array of all of those new features that I wanted to show you. So I'm going to do a quick little introduction to what they are, and then we'll jump right into the suite and I'll show you some of those inside the actual application. Now, one of the biggest new features that you're going to find is our fast browse. It's unbelievably fast, painfully fast. Quick previews of your raw files, PSDs, TIFFs, JPEGs, whatever it is, you're going to be able to see those immediately inside Browse. You also now have the ability to go through and add keywords, adjust your metadata, sort through your images, add stars and ratings and tags. So you're not just stuck with being able to find your images, you can now filter them out and get them ready to send to other applications. And because that 5-star rating is located in your metadata file of a raw image, that's going to transfer over to other applications that can read that, again, like Lightroom, like Adobe Bridge, and so on. So we're really trying to make sure that Browse is something that can integrate no matter what program you like to use. One of the other brand new features are our smart photos. This allows you to re-edit your images even after you've exited the program. So after you've saved and closed, you can jump back into an image and re-edit all of those features. So if you go into Perfect Effects and you add a filter and you want to go back in and adjust that filter, instead of having to start again from scratch, you can access smart photos and re-edit along the way. We've got brand new masking tools. We're really excited about the masking tools. We've combined Perfect Mask and Perfect Layers together because all of the compositing and masking that you're going to want to be doing should be in the same place. We've got our new Quick Mask tool, which I'll show you how to use today, which will quickly get rid of a background. And then we've got a whole bunch of other refinement tools to help make sure that those masks are nice and crisp. Now, we've got 2 brand new filters here. We have our new lens flare, which is located inside of Perfect Effects, which is a super fun filter. And then we also have our new noise reduction. A lot of people have been asking us for noise reduction, and we produced it for this iteration of the suite. It's in multiple different places, which is really great. So you can find it in Enhance, you can find it in Effects, and it works very similarly to any other version of noise reduction. And I'll show you how to use that a little bit later as well. We've got a brand new auto tone feature to help automatically adjust your images just with 1 or 2 clicks, which is really great. We've got auto tone and auto color there. So if you don't know where to start with an image, you've got those options. And then we also have our new crop and level tool. So we used to have a very, very simplified crop tool. Now everything is all in the same place, and it's going to make that whole process a lot easier. The last thing that I do want to mention is we have brand new print options, and this is really exciting. You're going to be able to print from the suite no matter where you are. So if you're inside Perfect Layers and you just finished out your image, awesome, print. If you're inside Perfect Resize and you just upsized your photo and you're ready to print, you can print straight from there. So no matter where you are, you can access our print module, and it works just like any other print module. So you'll have access to all of the other options that you're used to having in other places. So that's kind of a quick overview of some of the new stuff that you're going to find inside the suite. If you haven't already downloaded the trial, definitely do that. We have a free 30-day trial, and then we've got awesome online We've also got awesome online deals right now. So check out the On One Software page. We've got a lot of stuff up here for you guys. All right, let's go ahead and hide that there. And I am inside of Perfect Photo Suite 9. Dun, 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 dun. Now, the first thing we're going to go over is browse. And a lot of people kind of need a little bit of help understanding what browse is. I like to think of it as a mirroring program. So we don't catalog your images the way that Lightroom and Aperture does. When you upload your photos into Lightroom, they're creating thumbnails and copies of your file and creating a library of images. These are photos that exist automatically on my desktop. So these are images that I had loaded up into a folder to use specifically for this webinar. And I'm not cataloging them. I'm not going to be spending a lot of time waiting for them to load up because they're already on my computer. They're ready to go. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, you've got your sources pane. This is where you'll have access to all of your hard drive sources. Like you'll see, I'm on my On One University hard drive, but I also have an external hard drive called my video webinar hard drive. So I can click on any of these. I can also access online storage spaces. And this is one of my favorites. I use Google Drive a lot. And so if I select my Google Drive account, I can access all of the images that are on there, and I can edit and save them. So you'll see this image here, I actually edited earlier, and it's got a filter that I added inside Perfect Effects, and it's saved right back to my Drive account, which is really great. So I can access all of the images that I might want from Google Drive or any of the other online storage services, which is really nice. I also have a whole bunch of my favorite folders, and you'll see there's a drag to favorites here section. So if I go to, let's jump up to my desktop really quickly. If I want to open up my photos folder, and you'll see I've got a lot of different folders in here. There's one called demo images, and I like to use these a lot when I'm doing demonstrations for webinars or if I'm prepping for a video. So I'm going to select my demo images folder and just click and drag it over to my favorites library. And now it's over there on the left, and I can access it very, very easily. Now let's go into the webinar external hard drive here, and I want to open up a folder really quickly just so I can show you how fast these raw files process. So I've got this image here called Barb Greenhouse. I'm going to open it up. These are all images that I took for a friend's greenhouse. She was doing something for her backyard. She wanted to show off some stuff. And so I took all these images, and they're all raw files, and there's, I believe, 200 plus raw files in here. So we'll go ahead and double click this, and it will automatically pop up, and you'll see that the photos just like immediately loaded. So I'm not spending a lot of time waiting for them to load. They're doing it automatically. Now, if I want to, I can scroll through a couple of different images. So let's go ahead and double click on a photo. Loads automatically. On the right-hand side, you're going to be able to access all of the info for your image. So if you want to take a look at things like ISO, shutter speed, all that kind of stuff, really, really basic information about your image, you're going to find it over there. And then down below, you have your metadata here. So I can add in things like author, description, and keywords. So if I want to type in that the author is LePage, I can do that. And maybe let's add a backyard keyword, and we'll go ahead and do that. You'll also see down at the bottom of your screen, you have some star ratings right down here. You've got a like and dislike button. And then you also have this little box right here, which is clear right now. But I can open that up and I can give it a color tag as well. Now, the best part about the star ratings and the color tags is that they're transferable to other applications. So if I know that I really, really want to label all of my favorite images with blue, I will go ahead and select blue. You'll also see that those little keyboard shortcuts there are to help make this process a little bit faster. So I can actually just press the 9 key on my keyboard, go ahead and hit 9, and that blue tag will pop up. You can also click inside your image to zoom in. So we can go ahead and we can zoom into the photo, take a closer look and see what's in focus, what's blurry, whether I need to, find another image, whatever it might be, I can take a closer look at this photo. We can also go through and we can zoom through my images really quickly. So we're just going to kind of click and drag until we find the photos that we're looking for. If you do need to do basic things like rotate, you can jump up to the top of your screen and you've got a couple of different options up here. If you go to the photo menu, you've got your rotate buttons. So let's rotate this clockwise and get that up right there. And we can take a look at this photo and let's do the same thing. Now we can look at them side by side and maybe see which one we like better. I'm not 100% sure, so we'll go to the next set of images. So it's really, really easy to jump through and take a look at all of these different photos and rate the ones you like, maybe tag the ones you don't. You can delete photos, add photos, rename photos, all that kind of stuff is here inside Browse. So this is a really, really great front end to whatever application you like to use, whether it's the Perfect Photo Suite or whether it's Lightroom. Now, one of the best parts about using this as a starting point to Lightroom is on the left-hand side of the screen in your Filters tab, we're going to go ahead and turn this on. What this means is we want to filter out the images that have a certain tag, a certain rating, whether I like or dislike them. So let's go ahead and click on the blue icon there. And it will show me all of the photos that have a blue tag. So let's say that these are all of the images that I want to bring into Lightroom. Instead of cataloging all of these photos, which is a lot of images, and I don't want to go through and catalog all of them, I want to just send to Lightroom those blue filters. So now I can select those 4 photos. So let's go ahead and choose those. We'll control click or right click, and right down at the bottom, you're going to see send to Lightroom. You can also send to Aperture. You can send your images over to Photoshop. I have Photoshop CC 2014, but you'll have access to CC and CS6 here. And you can choose another application if you'd like to. The other thing that I want to point out in this menu is you've also got your rename file, your delete file, and then you can copy and paste your images here as well, which is really nice. So, a lot of options here inside Browse. Now let's jump back over, there we go, to our folder here. And I want to talk to you about a couple of other things. Let's jump into Perfect Layers, and I want to introduce you to the masking tools in there. Now, when it comes to masking, there are some differences with what used to be inside Perfect Mask. And there are some specialty refinement tools to help these masks look a little bit better. So a lot of people assume that when we use the quick mask tool that, we're saying, oh, it's so easy. It is really easy, but you have to remember that a lot of times masks never get it 100% the first time around. You always have to go back in and refine those edges. And so I want to make sure I hammer that in today. So let's go ahead and let's take this photo here. We're going to go up to the top right-hand corner and click on Layers. I want to edit a copy of my original image, and then I've got copy options down below so I can readjust those. We're going to be talking about this Smart Photo re-editability a little bit later. We'll go ahead and click OK. Now, one of the coolest tricks that you can access here inside Perfect Layers, and this is one I use on a pretty regular basis to create things like vignettes or to darken parts of my image. It's kind of like a cheating way of burning part of your photo. If you've ever heard of burning and dodging, it's where you lighten and darken selected parts of your image. This is a really great example. We have the people in the foreground, the family in the foreground who are nice and bright. Their faces look really good, but the background is a little too bright. I want to darken it so that they stand out a little bit more. So the trick that I like to do is on the right-hand side, you're going to see your layer stack. And there is one layer in there, our original family photo. We're going to duplicate that layer by clicking this button on the bottom left. And now we've got two of the exact same photo. So if I turned these layers on and off, you're not going to see a single difference because they're exactly the same. With that top layer, I'm going to go up to my blending drop-down menu and scroll down to multiply. And what multiply is doing is it's blending and darkening your image with the underlying layer. So the entire photo looks darker. What we want to do is just selectively darken the background and leave the subjects in the foreground alone. So to do that, the quick mask tool definitely comes in handy. On the left-hand side of the screen, you're going to find it right here in the middle, and we'll choose quick mask. I'm going to hover my mouse over my image here, make my brush just a little bit smaller so it'll fit over the faces here. And I am going to click and drag over the people in the image that I want to save. So we'll go over her, make sure we get all of the hair. We're going to make sure we get all of the faces there. And once we're done, we'll go ahead and let go. It's going to create a quick mask for me. And then on the right-hand side, we're going to go over to the layer stack and change that blending mode back over to multiply. So it did an awesome job of darkening the background. You'll see all of their faces are still nice and bright. There might be a couple spots that we need to clean up here. So I like to start out with the quick mask tool, which removes the bulk of the background. We did 90% of what we need to do. Now, there are a couple of different tools that you can use, but my favorite in an instance like this is the masking brush. This is our basic masking brush, but if you go up to the tool options bar, you can access our perfect brush, which is our edge detection tool. And this is really, really useful for cleaning up very quick masks. So we'll go ahead and turn that perfect brush on, and it pays attention to color and tone information to create a better edge to a mask. It's awesome. So let's go through and let's make our brush a little bit smaller, and we're just going to click and drag maybe over the areas that we want to remove that multiply layer from. We can also add back in color. So you'll see that there's this little section between the girls that's still bright. So we're going to click and drag over that area there with that perfect brush. And because we've got it selected, I'm not worried about it going over any of the areas that I don't want. It's doing an awesome job of selecting the spots I want to clean up, and then it's leaving my foreground alone. So now that we've got our good mask, you can see it on the right-hand side. There's a little thumbnail next to the layer that we just created that shows that I added a mask for this image. So we can take a look. This was our original photo with the too bright background, and this is our after. Don't forget that Perfect Layers comes with all of the basic layering tools that you're going to want to access. So if this is a little too dark, don't hesitate to just go up to the top and adjust your layer opacity. And this will reduce the transparency of that layer down just a bit, and that looks a little bit more natural. Once I'm done, I can go ahead and click save, or if I want to, I can continue my editing process from here. It's totally up to you. But for now, we're just going to close out of this image. And let's jump back into Browse so I can show you another photo. And we're going to talk about some of the other tools that you have access to inside layers. All right. Now, along with the basic quick mask tool, on the left-hand side, when you select it, up in the tool options bar, there's a small icon that looks like a box. So it's right up at the top. This is called our box tool. And it goes along with the quick mask tool, so it works in a slightly similar way by paying attention to things like color and edges. But what I like about it is it's really good for extracting subjects from a background. And I like it a lot more when I've got one subject, something that's a little bit more simple. When I've got something that's a little bit more difficult, I might use that manual masking tool, the quick brush or the quick mask brush. But for this, I've got a subject, she's in the foreground. I just want to cut her out of the background. So we're going to take that box mode tool. We're going to click and drag around our subject, make sure we get all of her in there, and then just hit the enter or return button. It's going to go through and it's going to delete as much of the background as it can handle. So it did an awesome job. Again, 95% of the background that we really needed to get rid of is gone. Now there are a couple of different refinement tools because you'll see that there's a little bit of an edge around the front of her that I need to go ahead and clean up. And then there's all of this excess sky behind her hair and her fingers. So the two tools that I use are the refine brush and the chisel tool. So let's start out with the refine brush. This goes through and it refines the edges of a mask that you've already created. That's a really important thing to remember is you can't use this around the edge of a subject when you haven't taken out a background already. So the refinement tool is there to just refine an edge that already exists. But once it does, we can go through and let's just click and drag. We're going to try and get all of the hair in there. So you want to get the foreground and the background when you paint with the refine brush. It's going to go through and it's going to refine that edge for me. It's going to remove all that excess blue and it's going to leave her hair intact. And we'll do the same thing down at the bottom. We're going to click and drag over the hair down there. It's going to remove that excess. And let's do the same thing down here with the fingers. We want to get rid of the excess blue that's down there. There's a little bit left over. So we'll go through and get rid of that. Now, you'll also see that there's still a little bit of leftover blue kind of around the front of her. And we can use the refine brush like I'm doing here to just kind of clean up those edges. But there's also another tool that helps chisel away. And that is our chisel tool. And its main job is just what it sounds. It chisels away a layer of pixels around your mask edge. So again, you have to create a mask before you use it. But once you do, you control the amount it removes right up at the top. So if we wanted to remove a lot or a little, we can go up and adjust that there. I'm just going to remove a lot so you can really see what's happening here. But let's go down and let's use this tool right along the edge. And you'll see all of a sudden that blue that was left over is disappearing. Now I'm removing a little too much just so you guys can see what's happening. But again, I can control that amount up in my tool options bar. And I can use this individually in places where I think it really needs it. So let's go over kind of around her face right there. And then maybe let's see if there's something right along her hand that needs to get removed as well. And that's looking a lot better. So with the combination of those two tools, you've got a lot of options here for cleaning up those masks and getting the type of mask that you're going to need for your image editing. Don't forget that you always have access to that perfect brush as well, which is an amazing addition to these tools. And you can take a look at your mask by going down to the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, opening up the All Layers drop-down menu, and going up and choosing a mask mode. So let's go ahead and take a look at mask grayscale, which is down at the bottom, and black will be the area that we removed. White is the area that we're keeping. All right, so let's go ahead and close out of that image and let's move on. We're going to talk about smart photos and we're going to talk about perfect effects. So we're going to do all of that in one fell swoop just because a lot of it comes together. And so I want to make sure that we talk about both options there. Smart Photos is an amazing tool to have access to, an absolutely amazing tool to have access to because it allows you to re-edit your images. So we're going to start out. Let me delete my smart photo copy there. So we've only got one. We're going to take this image here and I want to bring it into Perfect Effects and I want to access some of the new favorite looks that we have, maybe go in and add a couple of my own filters. I'm not 100% sure what all of the adjustments I want to do are yet, but let's take this into Effects. So we'll go up to the top right-hand corner, click on Effects. We'll go ahead and edit a copy. And I'm going to go down and check the Smart Photo Re-Editable PSD box. This box is not available if your file format is set to TIFF or JPEG. So if I choose JPEG, that will be grayed out and I won't have access to it. So do make sure that you're creating a Photoshop file here. We'll go ahead and click OK. Now, the new Perfect Effects has a similar setup, but on the left-hand side of the screen, there's something called our Unwon Favorite Looks category. And these are a whole bunch of our favorite presets that we've kind of combined together to create styles that we think you might want to play around with. And a lot of them are drastically different. And so I think there are a lot of people who don't know where to start in Perfect Effects. A lot of people who want to try maybe a new style. There's a matte look that's everywhere these days, kind of softens out your grays and your highlights. And not everybody knows how to create it or has a hard time making it look not necessarily realistic, but I talk to a lot of people who don't really understand how to apply it. And so we created a couple of different matte looks for you to play around with and so on. So these On One Favorite looks are over here on the left underneath the favorites library. You can hover your mouse over the category and click on the Quick View browser on the right-hand side. And let's go ahead and jump into On One Favorite looks. And these are all of the different ones that we've got in that category. So you'll see we've got a matte black and white there. We've got a faded matte red, which I really like. We've got down at the bottom, one of my favorites for kind of studio style portraits is this washed out portrait. So let's go ahead and let's scroll back up. And I'm going to choose this option called Color Fade, which is like a lightly vintage, soft matte style. And we'll go ahead and click to apply it. Now, on the right-hand side, you'll see that we've got a couple of different filters that are used to create that look. Any one of these can be adjusted. So the top is a split tone filter, and you'll see when I turn it on and off using the icon on the left, that it's what's adding kind of that yellowish teal look. So we can turn that on and off and see whether we like it or not. Maybe it's a little too strong. I can use the layer opacity right at the top of my filter stack and maybe downplay it just a tad. I can also go down and delete layers and add filter layers right at the bottom left. And if I click the trash icon, it will delete all of the filters in your filter stack and let you start again from scratch. When you apply a filter, let's go ahead and let's add that matte black and white one. Let's see, maybe I like this one a little bit better. Down below, whenever you have a filter selected, you can go down to the filter options pane and you can play around with any of the options that go along with that specific filter. So if we click on the black and white filter, we can go down and we can make adjustments like brightness and contrast. We can go in and add detail. We could add a toner here, which might be a really good option if we don't want it to just be classic black and white, whatever it might be. For now, what I want to do is go down to the bottom right and click Save and Close. We've added these two filters in our filter stack using the On One Favorite look, and I'm not going to make any adjustments right now. I'm just going to click Save and Close and exit the program. Now, the reason why we did that is because I want to jump back in and re-edit this image. You'll notice when I zoom out to my library view here, there's a small icon on the bottom right that shows, it's a little gear, that shows that this is a smart photo, which means I can reopen it. You'll also see that the smart photo history dialog on the right-hand side shows that this image was edited in perfect effects. So if I want to re-edit it, I can just click on the application I want to go into. What's really great about this is if you have multiple applications, like you started out in Enhance, then you went to Effects, and then you went to Black and White, you can do all of those in one fell swoop. So let's go ahead and let's double click on Perfect Effects. And we're going to go back in, and it's going to process the image in the same way. It's going to have my black and white filter and my tone enhancer. So now let's go down and let's make an adjustment. Let's click on that black and white filter and let's add a toner this time. Now, there are a lot of different toners in here. One of my favorites for black and whites is called Gold and Selenium, which has a very, very simple purple color for the shadows and a gold color for the highlights. And I think it's really classy and it's not as in your face as sepia tone can be, which a lot of times is a little too orange for my taste. So we're going to choose Gold and Selenium. And I'm going to go up and maybe adjust the brightness a little bit. So let's add just a touch more to the whites and just a little bit more to the blacks. And let's go back up and add that tone enhancer, which is what's adding the matte effect. And again, we can scroll down to the filter stack and make some changes. Let's add a little bit of clarity in there, a little bit more detail. And there we go. So we started out with a flat black and white look. Now we added a toner, we went in and added a little bit more detail and a little bit more contrast to make everything pop out. And once we're done, again, we'll save and close those adjustments. It'll be saved on the same PSD file. It'll bring me right back into Browse, and I'm not going to have multiple copies of the same image. There is my original photo, and there is the exact same smart photo copy that we created of that original. If you're a Lightroom user, you know that a lot of times when you're re-editing, sometimes you're creating copy after copy, and sometimes you can end up with 2 or 3 copies of the same image. And this is going to cut down a lot on the amount of space you're going to create, because you're only making one copy of your image that you can jump back into and re-edit as needed. All right, so that's kind of a quick introduction to Perfect Effects. There are a couple other things in there that I want to show you. So let's go ahead and let's start out with, I'm going to take another image in there, and I want to introduce you to some of the other filters that we've got going on inside Perfect Effects. So let's start out with noise reduction. That's a good one. I'm going to take this and I'm actually going to bring it into Enhance just because I want to show you that you have access to it in multiple different places. So I will select my image, go up to Enhance. I'm going to turn the Smart Photo re-editability off because I'm going to cancel out of this image later, so I don't need it right now, but we'll go ahead and click OK. You don't always have to use Smart Photos. It is totally up to you. Some photos I use it, other photos I don't. So it'll all depend on what you're looking to do with your image and whether you think you might re-edit it later. Now, when you're inside Enhance, on the right-hand side of the screen, underneath the Quick Fixes pane, this is where Auto Tone and Auto Color live. So if you do want to access our auto adjustment tools, you can do that. Also, we've got our Crop tool, which right up at the top also includes our level tool and a whole bunch of the size options that we've got underneath our preset drop-down menu. But for now, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to do our noise reduction. So let's close the quick fixes and go down to noise reduction. There are a couple of different presets right up at the top that you can choose. It's up to you what you want to try. You can also just start from scratch. We've got our luminance and color noise sliders, and then we also have a detail slider in there just to help make sure that you preserve the edges in your image. There's also a box called automatically zoom 1:1. What that means is if I take my luminance slider, I haven't done anything yet. If I take my luminance slider and I start to move it over to the right, automatically zooms into my image 100%. And this is where you need to be to remove noise. You've got to be zoomed in 100% of your image so you can really see what's going on here, because this is where you're going to be able to see all that noise. Sometimes when you're zoomed out, you can't always see it. You're paying attention to other things. You're trying to adjust the tones and the clarity of your image and the colors of your image, and the noise kind of falls into the background. So when you zoom into 100%, you get a much clearer view of that noise. Now, the presets themselves, just click on them and they'll adjust. The color noise you don't always need to use. This is a great example of that because it's a black and white photo. So I'm going to push that down to 0, and then I'm just going to keep taking my luminance noise over to the right. And there we go. That's looking a little bit better. Now I've got my detail slider over just to make sure that I preserve those details. And we'll go ahead and zoom back out. And there we go. The image already looks a lot less noisy than we started out with. I can play around with that luminance even more. If I save this as a smart photo, I will have re-editability with my noise reduction, which is really great. So if I decide that I went a little overboard or I need to add a little bit more, I can come right back in here. And again, we just go down to the bottom right and click Save and Close. So it's a very simple tool to use, but you'll have access to it in Enhance, and then you'll also have the noise reduction filter in Effects. So it's very, very easy. All right, let's go ahead and let's jump back into Effects. And I want to show you the last filter that you have access to, the last kind of newer filter that you have access to. So we're going to take our image here, go into Effects, go ahead and edit a copy. Now, the lens flare filter is, I think a lot of people are not 100% sure when to use it. And the thing about lens flare is that it is an addition to your image that's there to help enhance it in a fun way. It's not something that you necessarily need on your images. It's definitely not something that you are required to play around with. Some people, it's not their style, not their jam. Other people, absolutely love it. I've been using it a lot just because I really like creating lens flares on my images, especially portrait photos that I take outside. It's a good way to enhance sunspots that already exist, which is really nice. And the best part about our lens flare filter is that you can also go in and add other styles. So let me show you how it works. On the left-hand side of the screen, I'm going to go to the filters library. These are all of the base filters that are used to create the favorite looks that I was just showing you and the presets that we've included for free. Now, the preset library really quickly, if you guys were Perfect Photo Suite 8 users, you might notice that some of these preset categories are a little different. A lot of the presets that you love are still here. They've just been reorganized a little bit. So a lot of them ended up in places like the color pop category or the urban category. You just got to open them up and play around with them. And don't forget, you have the search bar up at the top. So if I'm looking for something like the golden hour enhancer, which is one of my favorites, I just type in golden and there it is, golden hour enhancer. And then we also have a golden hour sunshine, which is like a combination of the golden hour enhancer and a sunshine effect. So I can go ahead and I can search for things if I know what I'm looking for. Now let's jump over to the filters library here, and these are all of those base filters. You'll see lens flare and noise reduction are actually right next to each other, so we're making it nice and easy for you to find them. And we'll open up the lens flare category. Now, anytime that you open up a filter category, these are filter-based presets. These are presets that only go with this singular filter. And I'm going to open it up in the Quick View browser just so we can get a better look. Now, the thing that you'll notice about the lens flare is there are a couple of different kinds. There's the rings that you see sometimes when you shoot right into the sun. That happens a lot. But you're also going to see kind of a sunspot option, like in this image here, because it's really kind of blowing out that sky in the top right-hand corner. And there are both of those options inside of the lens flare. Now, you'll also see that a couple of these have effects on them. Like this subtle faded here has a matte style look to it. And that's because you've got a lot of other options. Now let's go ahead and let's start out by choosing one that we want to play around with. I'm going to select Cold Fusion and we'll click once. It'll add the lens flare filter on the right. And then down below, this is where we can play around with adjustments. I'm going to start out just by showing you the bottom section, which is where you can choose a color styling and adjust things like blooming, shadow fade, vibrance, and then the amount of that color style. So if I go up to the color style drop-down menu, let's swap this over to ocean. Actually, let's go over to oatmeal. I like that one. So we'll choose oatmeal and we'll change that color style. We can adjust the amount slider there. So this is our original image with no color style, and this is with that kind of warm oatmeal look. The vibrance slider, I'm going to move down just a little bit because it's too intense. The shadow fade is a good way to soften the shadows and give it that matte style. And then the blooming filter is there to just pop up those highlights and make them look like they're really bright and overexposed. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of working down below. At the top, this is where you add the lens flare or the sunspot. Now the lens flare itself are, again, those rings, those bright red spots that sometimes you see when you shoot into the sun. The amount slider is going to adjust how intense they are in your image. So you'll see as I move it over to the right, these get even brighter. And then the size just adjusts how big it is. So as I move it to the left, those little spots get a little bit smaller. You'll also see that there's an option called Show Rings. If I turn that off, you kind of end up with just these little bright sunspots, and that could be an awesome option too. It's totally up to you. So if we move the size down, we can go in and we can just create those kind of bright spots. So it's up to you which ones you like. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger again. Now, there are also the centering tool, and then there's also kind of the camera angle tool. So the centering tool chooses where we want this center spot to be. So I can click and drag depending on where I want it. So let's put it right up above the house on the top right. And then if I choose that camera angle icon, I can click and drag where I want those angles to be. So depending on where I was shooting, I can have them layering on top of each other and just create that really big sunspot like I was talking about earlier, or I can move these around depending on what I want to do. So it's totally up to you. Now, the other style option is something called a sunspot. And the sunspot, let's move the amount down a little bit, is kind of like these giant sun rays that you're seeing over here. You can adjust the amount or the intensity. So if I move it all the way to 100, it's going to blow out my whole image. We can lower that down a little bit. And then we can also adjust how many rays are there. So if we move that over to the left, you're going to end up with just maybe like 2 or 3. You're going to get these brighter spots across your image. And then you can recenter that sunspot using the little centering tool. So we can click and drag it into place depending on where we want it to be. We'll go ahead and lower that amount down a little bit, maybe lower the rays down a little bit as well. So that's kind of the basics of the lens flare filter. It's mostly something that I like to play around with. It's not always something that I'm kind of, I know exactly when I want it on my image. Most of the time, it's something that I just click and apply and see if I really like it on something. I'm still learning it and I'm still playing around with it, but it's been a lot of fun so far and I've been using it on a lot of different images. So let's go ahead and let's trash that. The last thing that I'm going to mention here really quickly inside effects is on the left-hand side, those preset categories. A lot of these are brand new. We have a new matte category here that I got to help create, and this is a great place to start if this is a style that you're interested in applying to your photos. We've got mattes that are going to be a little bit more intense. We've got ones that are going to be a lot more stylized. And then if you scroll down, we also have ones that are desaturated a little bit. So if you're interested in creating a black and white style look, we've got cool, warm, and neutral options. And then we also have some down at the bottom that are going to be a little bit more subtle. So this is a brand new category that we created. There's also a new one called texture combos. If you ever saw our textures category, it was every single texture we had, which was dozens upon dozens, all lined up one right after the other. We created special texture combos that include other filters instead of just listing every texture that we own, because you can find those on the right hand side, and there are a lot of really cool ones in here. The black and white photocopy is one that I've actually been using a lot. I didn't think I would, but I ended up falling in love with it, and it's really cool. And I can go down and I can select one of these from here as well. So there are some super awesome new presets that we created for you guys just for this iteration of Perfect Effects. The last thing that I will mention is I'm just going to add a filter really quickly so that I can show this to you, because I forgot to mention this right at the beginning, is we do have our masking tools now. These are the same masking tools that you saw inside of Perfect Layers. Our Quick Mask tool, Refine Brush, and Chisel tool are all here, along with our Perfect Brush inside our masking brush tool options bar. So if I wanted to, for instance, you'll see that there's a texture on this image that I'm turning on and off. And if I decide that I don't like it, I can go through and I can use any of these masking tools, or I can just hand paint it out. So let's say we wanted to remove that filter. I'm just going to use that Perfect Brush really quickly, and I'm going to clean up that texture on the sky and then leave it on the bottom half of the image. And you'll see on the right hand side, I've got my mask that if I save this as a smart photo, I will have re-editability of. So not only do I have re-editability of filters, but I also have re-editability of masks that go along with them. So if I had saved this as a smart photo, I could re-access these if I wanted to. Okay. Now, while we're back here inside Perfect Browse, I just want to re-mention, don't forget that you do have access to printing. One of the other things that's really useful is you also have access to batch processing. It's not new. We had batch processing in the last version, but I think printing and batch processing and editing in programs like Perfect Effects is an amazing option. So don't forget that you have access to those. If you're inside Perfect Browse, you'll find them in the File menu. You'll see down at the bottom, there's your batch tool. And if I select an image, so let's choose this photo, I can go up and choose the print option here as well. And it'll open up my print dialog box and I can edit from there. Also, you can use this through programs like Lightroom, Aperture, Photoshop, and Photoshop Elements. If you have questions about our tech specs, we've got those online. There are some versions of Photoshop, Lightroom, Aperture, and Elements that we don't work with, but we usually work with the last 2 versions. So for Photoshop, we work with CC 2014, CC, and CS6. So just jump online if you've got questions about those tech specs, but we do still work as a plugin. I just like to show off that our standalone has gotten so much better, and starting out here inside Perfect Browse and being able to go through and tag and rate and adjust metadata is making the whole process of using the standalone even better. So you still have access to the plugin files, but don't forget that this program is getting better and better as a standalone as we come out with new versions.